Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to another episode of Mr. Rolls' Class. Today's episode is sponsored in part by the Sprite that I may occasionally be sipping, and strawberry Pop Tarts. So, sorry, needed a midday snack today. As you can recall, we have been studying population characteristics, and today we're going to look at a very important tool that geographers use when studying population called population pyramids. And they look a little something like this. Population pyramids are a simplified way to show how a country's population is broken up by sex and age. And a lot of information can be discerned from these populations, such as the quality of a country's healthcare system, the type of labor that many of a country's citizens engage in. And you can also see a variety of trends in history, such as what may have been a war or a famine, an economic recession, um, a baby boom period. We'll talk about that, and maybe some other issues as well. So, beginning, here are sort of the three basic shapes of population pyramids that you are going to need to know right here. Um, on the right, you have a rapid growth company such as the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the middle, you have a slow, stable growth model such as the United States. And on the far opposite side, you've got negative growth, which would be represented like a country like Germany, which is actually decreasing in its natural increase rate. Okay, so we're going to start taking a look at a high growth country and what it looks like. Here is Niger. This population pyramid is from, as you can see on the top, 2016. On the left, you have the males. On the right, you have females. And you notice with this particular population pyramid, there's a very steep incline in the pyramid. And this is typically what we would consider here in the West not a good looking model. What that means is, for one, you've got a high infant mortality rate. That is illustrated by the sharp um, incline here between the 0 and 4 and 5 and 9 ages, even though infant mortality looks at the death of infants 1 or younger, we can still infer that a lot of children are not reaching adulthood here. Their population is also made up primarily of young people, and this is problematic too. If we were to visit Niger, we would probably see a lot of orphanages, homelessness among children, because as you can also see, the adults are not living long enough to provide for the care that these children need. There are very few people that are actually living into old age, and that can be problematic as well. Taking a look at this next pyramid. The next pyramid is Peru. Again, 2016. You notice that Peru kind of looks like a bell or a Hershey kiss, um, something like that. And the bell shaped population pyramid represents a country that is improving and industrializing. Okay, so as you can see here in Peru, it doesn't have that steep incline from children to teenagers. So most children are now living into adulthood, which is a good thing, right? Both males and females. Um, and you can also see that the older population is living uh, considerably longer as well, which is also a positive trend. Population pyramid is Australia, and you can see some interesting trends here as well. You can see the existence of a baby boom. The adults now between the ages of 30 and 60. A couple generations ago, there were a lot of children that were born here on Australia. Since then, the population has largely leveled off. You can see that this sort of even increase here means that the population is stable. The natural increase rate is not particularly high. And the infant mortality rate is also quite low. And this is pretty common with a lot of developed countries today. We see this trend. There are not a lot of children that are being born today in the developed world, and populations are largely stable or even decreasing. So, talking about a decreasing population again, here's Germany. And you can see that the number of children here at the bottom, you must have this inversion of a pyramid looking like this. The number of children being born is not sufficient to replace the current population. So Germany has a decreasing natural increase rate, a relatively low birth rate. You can clearly also see the baby boom here in the middle between adults 44 and 70. The baby boom occurred really universally after World War II. Once the world entered a period of peace, not only did we have a baby boom here in the United States, but you can also see here that Germany experienced the same thing as well. You can also see the devastation that World War II had on the male population. You can see here between the 80 and 85 years, a significant portion of the pyramid is missing. It's almost like a chunk has been taken out right there. That may have to do with the number of men that died in World War II. So here's Russia. Russia has a pretty interesting pyramid as well. This is actually Russia in 2050. So this is a predictive population pyramid. Obviously, it's going to 2050 will be quite some time into the future. And as Russia continues to develop, it will take on the trends of other developed countries as well. Excuse me. Here's Botswana. This is an interesting case as well. This may indicate, notice here on the side of the females, there's almost a chunk that is taken out of the 34 to 49-year-olds. This may indicate a high level of maternal mortality, meaning mothers who die during childbirth or as a result of childbirth, complications from childbirth. This might indicate that Botswana does not have a great healthcare system, that there's some other issue that is underlying here. Now, also, you can see how it is somewhat bell-shaped, so we could probably infer that the economy and the healthcare system is improving in Botswana, but certainly a couple decades ago, there appears to have been some kind of problem, some kind of phenomena that happened in Botswana to kind of make the shape of its pyramid a little off kilter. All right, take a second here and think, what is going on in the United Arab Emirates according to this population pyramid? Why would you have such a skewed male to female ratio? You can pause if you want to think about it here, but here comes the answer. Okay. The UAE is home to a lot of guest workers, really across Asia, who are trying to escape the economic poverty of their country. So you'll see people from as far away as Nepal or the surrounding Middle Eastern countries migrate to the UAE to take part in the oil production industry. The oil production industry is highly dominated by men, difficult manual work. So you tend to see, and there's cultural elements behind why we see that as well. This high degree of a male population in the UAE compared to the female population. Okay, and lastly, we see China. So looking China just at kind of a bird's eye view might not seem like much curiosity, but if you look between the lines a little bit, or in closer detail, we see sort of an insidious pathology that this society has encountered here. Look at the number of young males as opposed to young females. And you'll notice there are more male boys, and really all the way up through the age groups here, than there are female girls. For a long time, males were favored in Chinese society, and it was not uncommon, particularly during the era of the one child policy, which lasted from the 70s up until just a few years ago. I want to say around 2014 or so. But boys were favored by girls. And tragically, you had a lot of infanticide that was practiced during this time. Abortions, either forced or voluntary, of girls, and adoptions out of China as a result of this one policy as well. Well, this favoring of boys and enacting a government policy to encourage them, the one child policy, has left China with some demographic issues today. As you can see here, there are not enough females, right, for unions with males and marriages. And so that is going to have a problem. So China's population may soon begin to decrease as well. So even though they are the most populated country today, it's quite possible that they will enter this population decline at some point in the future that was sort of artificially created by these government policies like longer, later, fewer, and the one child policy as well. So hopefully this will give you an idea of what you can do with population pyramids, how you can study them, how can they can be useful to explain geographic and demographic characteristics of the population. And you'll be putting this exercise into practice shortly. Thank you for watching.